This is Mena Grebin coming to you with Faithful Walk Healing Ministries. I hope everyone's doing good today. Today is Monday, October 14th of 2019. And I just want to talk to you all about a couple of things. I'm going to be quick and then I'm going to let you go. I just want to list a couple of things. I want to share with you all something that the Lord had given me right after our Days of Awe conference, which was not just this past Saturday, but Saturday before that, basically October 5th. We had our High Holy Days conference, which we have each and every year. Some of you were able to join us for that. It was very dynamic. But that night, the Lord showed me something that I want to talk to you all about. So we're not technically out of hurricane season, but pretty much it's over, okay? But before this season began, earlier this year, some of you may recall that I put out a post on our Watchman on the Wall page, which is actually basically linked to our main account or mainstream website, which is faithfulwalkhealingministries.com, regarding a dream that I had where I saw a catastrophic flooding coming in, and basically it covered parts of I-95, which I-95, if you're not familiar with it, it is a main interstate, a major interstate, I should say, that literally runs from Miami all the way down or all the way up to Maine. So basically from Florida to Maine, it's a main vein interstate, if you want to call it that, that runs basically mostly the coastline, east coastline of the United States. And so I talked about this dream that I had, and I posted, I should say, and I was talking about this, whatever was coming. I just saw the water rushing in. Even in the dream that I had, it was not necessarily a sunny day. It was kind of a cloudy day. But my point is that I didn't see any rain or wind. I didn't see a storm. I just saw this water rushing in. So anyways, and I knew it was going to impact the east because I was driving on I-95, which I-95 is something that I'm very familiar with because I travel up and down the East Coast. So that was put out earlier this year, before hurricane season started, which hurricane season typically starts from June to November. Okay. So what happened right after our High Holy Days conference is that I was given a night vision, and once again I saw I-95 underwater, and this time it was like an open vision and at night, and I could count the areas that were impacted. Now, I'm not saying that these were cities or towns. I saw 8 different parts. They were all included under with highways and interstate, okay? And the water was just rushing in. And it was coming in so fast that people could not escape it. And once again, I did not see like a particular storm, or wasn't raining. It wasn't like it wasn't given to me what was causing this event. But what I was told was that there is still an impending judgment that is going to involve water. In March, I believe, of this year, I put out a video where it was titled, the Lord saying he would divide the lands by water. And I'm pretty sure plenty of you have watched that video since March. But I talk about the scripture that God gave me in Habakkuk, and what he had given me. And I know that some people were trying to say, oh, he's not going to flood the earth again. He said this back in Genesis. And it's like, well, this has nothing to do with him flooding the entire earth. This has to do with him using water as a form of judgment, which we have seen in 2019. Everything from all of the snow that came down in the Midwest earlier this year, then it all rapidly melted and it flooded our entire farmlands. That really ruined the crops this year. It ruined our crops completely for this year. To overflowing rivers and banks again, once again in the Midwest. Um, we did have the hurricanes as well that had brought flooding and storm surge and wind and rain, and so we've seen multiple events just this year involving water and flooding. And I just found out just what the other day there was, I don't even know exactly what happened in Iowa, but I saw more footage of flooding in Iowa, and I don't know what brought that on, but when they were driving along the highway, it actually looked like they were on the shoreline of a beach. And I had to remember in my mind, because I'm pretty good with geography, but I had to like remember in my mind, wait a minute, Iowa's not near any ocean or Great Lake or anything, but there was just so much water. And again, I don't know what the details were. It was very recent, this month of October, that this happened. So we have seen flooding and even catastrophic flooding throughout this whole year. And I know this is something that God gave me back in the beginning of this year. And I guess in a sense, you know, with it becoming to the end of the year, going into winter, the fact that hurricane season is practically over, in my mind, in my spirit, I felt kind of like a rest, or maybe even letting my guard down, like, okay, you know, that part's over. So I was really surprised just past Saturday night or Saturday before last, when I was shown this. It really surprised me. But I have to tell you all, there is an impending judgment. There is still a judgment that involves water, and it's catastrophic. It's some catastrophic flooding. Like I said, in this night vision that I had, I was able to count 8 places. Again, are those 8 cities? Are those 8 counties? Are those 8 states? I don't know. And you know, when it comes to prophecy, if there's anything I have learned, it's that we see through the glass dimly. All I know is that there were 8 places. I counted them, and I saw highways completely underwater. I saw land completely underwater. Now, I don't want your imaginations to run too far, but this is what I want to tell you, because I feel it's really important that you know this. I want to go back first and remind you all that about approximately 3 years ago, the Lord said something to me in a riddle. And I know several of you heard me talk about this. I wrote it out originally on our website. I've repeated it at times in maybe a video or two, perhaps, and I've even said it publicly. But there was this riddle that he said to me back in 2016 that was just so bizarre, and I thought I had heard it before, and I actually went searching for it to see if I could find it somewhere, and I could not find it anywhere. I couldn't reference it to anything. But he said because America had not repented, that the war would come from the West and disaster would come from the East, and he would cut off the head. And so basically, when we look at that, we know, you know, exactly what that means in a sense. You know, if we look to the west of us, west of the West Coast in that sense, all of our enemies are west of us. We've got China, North Korea, Russia. I mean, that alone, I don't even go any further with just that. That alone is enough, because pretty much to the east of us, coming off the East Coast, going into Europe, are pretty much mostly our allies, all right? But when you look at okay, so he gave this to me in 2016. When you look at the disasters that have happened since 2016, I'm talking now natural disasters, they have all come from the Atlantic. They have come from the East, okay? And I mean, and we've had horrible, horrible storms in the last 3 years. Dorian, Matthew, Harvey. I mean, just crazy. Maria was another one. I can't even think of all of it. Irma, I think, was another one. I'm trying to name the really bad ones, not the the small ones. And it's just been crazy. I mean, we've got places that were completely wiped off the map. Historic flooding. I mean, we Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. Commonwealth, was, I mean, it was nearly wiped out. Nearly. I mean, it's been a year and a half. They're still recovering. And, the Matthew that hit last year and near Pensacola, Florida, I think it was like Mexico City town. I'm sorry, I forgot the name. Mexico City Beach, I believe it was called, near Pensacola. I mean, it looked like a bomb went off. And those people are still living in tents even now. We had one of the few, back in 2016, I believe, that wiped out the Keys. Remember that, Florida Keys or what have you. So we've just had catastrophic natural disasters that literally have come out of the East Coast in a sense, or the East, I should say, not the East Coast, but come out of the East, being east of us, that have traveled from the East and have hit our country just in the last 3 years. And I know most of the time our Atlantic hurricane season is the most catastrophic. Okay, we had Katrina back in 2005. But we have had natural disasters on the West, the fires being, the Napa Valley year before last, Paradise, California last year. We've had that, and but we haven't had too many really catastrophic natural disaster events like volcanoes exploding. Because remember, the West Coast, we have active volcanoes. We haven't had any major earthquakes. We've had small earthquakes. We haven't had any major earthquakes. So basically, as far as natural disasters are concerned, they pretty much come out of the East. All right. That being said, just kind of going back to what he said to me in 2016, because America has not repented, war will come from the West. Disasters, well, he actually said the first one, he said that the disasters would come from the East and war would come from the West, and he would cut off the head. And the head represents the government. It represents our leadership, or even a specific leader. And at the time he gave this to me, it was 2016. It was the beginning, around spring of 2000. I first mentioned this. So that being said, this impending judgment, because that's what the Lord called it, an impending judgment. He didn't say an impending event, an impending storm. He said an impending judgment that has not yet taken place, but is still coming, that is going to impact the East Coast. And so could it be a very catastrophic hurricane? We barely dodged one just, a month or so ago, or 2 months ago with Dorian. The answer is yes, it could be. It can be whatever God wants it to be. But the way I keep seeing this, saints, with this water rushing in, and I don't see a storm, I don't see wind, I don't see rain, it makes me wonder if it's a tsunami coming in from the Atlantic. Now, and I said I'm not going to keep you too long, and I'm going to keep my word on that. But let me just go back a little bit. About 6 years ago, I was living in the DC area temporarily. And that was the first time that I had ever been shown a tsunami, specifically a tsunami. In fact, the Lord showed it to me twice. But the second time he gave it to me, or no, he showed it to me, was it twice or was it 3 times? Maybe it was 3 times. Okay, I apologize about that. But the last 2 dreams that I had were literally like within weeks of me leaving that area and returning to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. All right. And I remember that third dream, it was so vivid and it was so real that it really just shook me up. Like, I saw 2 waves coming in. I've always been shown 2 waves. The deer were running. Me and my youngest daughter, we had to climb a tree to basically escape, which we were able to escape because we climbed up a very strong tree. But also, even the dream before that, it was DC. I was in broad daylight and I saw the water coming up out of the manholes. I saw the streets being flooded. I saw everything that was causing all of this stuff. And people were running up the hill. It was just all kinds of stuff that were going on. I saw the Potomac River, which is in the DC area, completely flooded. There was a wave of water that dumped over into the Potomac River that came from like the Atlantic Ocean. And it was just crazy. So anyways, those last two dreams were so vivid. So it left me shaken. So I remember just trying to scrub it out of my mind. And so I had returned to Charlotte and we had bought a house and I was unpacking boxes in my bedroom. And for 2 weeks, I had pretty much tried to scrub that dream from my mind. And I'm gonna tell you, I mean, and I'm transparent. I can tell you exactly what I was thinking because in my mind, I was like, God's not gonna allow something that horrible to happen, like unless it's during the tribulation and and the bride's not gonna be here for that. Like this is literally what was going through my mind at that time. And so I got confronted by God. Like I seriously got confronted by God. So I'm in my bedroom and I'm unpacking this box and the Lord speaks to me and he says to me, you do not believe that I will send this tsunami. And I froze because, okay, God is like confronting me. I need to make sure I am extremely careful about my response. Like I need to make sure that I am being dead honest at this point, like you don't want to end up, like Ananias and Sapphira, at that moment. And so I paused, I froze, like, and I was like, okay. And then I said, you're right. I said, well, it's not that I don't believe it, Lord. It's that my thoughts are, this is not going to happen with the bride being here. This is probably something that is going to happen during the tribulation or what have you. And he spoke to me and he said, but I will send one. He says, behold, I will send one to the East Coast. And he said that to me and it was so strong. And I never questioned it again after that. And then since then, that was 6 years ago. And since then, I've had a few other dreams. Now I'll bring back one that some of you guys have probably read. This is probably 4 years ago now. The Lord actually came to me, like I saw Jesus. He reached out his hand. He said, come, I want to show you something. That happens periodically with me. And that's when I absolutely know whatever he's showing me is going to happen. Okay. I can talk about dreams all day long. I can talk about who's in dreams, and dreams are prophetic. And sometimes dreams don't come to pass the way we think they're going to come past. When Jesus comes to me and like, I'm going to show you something, I know that it's serious. And so this was one of those incidences. And I remember taking his hand and we were immediately on the shoreline. And I don't know what shoreline it was, but it was dusk. The sun was setting. And me and him were just standing there observing the sky. The sky was very beautiful. And the sunset, I saw purples and reds and all of that. And all of a sudden I'm looking up at the sky and I see something piercing through the sky. And at first it just looks like a dot, but as I'm standing there observing it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Next thing I know, I realize it's a meteor and it shoots right over our heads. And it goes way off into the horizon in a sense, like it was so far away, I didn't see where it landed, but I knew it landed in an ocean. And when it landed, Jesus turns to me and he says, when it hits, tell the people they have 30 minutes to get to high ground. And boom, it was gone. That was it. So I know that, and there's been a couple of more since then, but I know that this is coming. When, I don't know, saints. I mean, if anything I've learned, don't date that, okay? Because just don't, okay? But I know that there is an impending judgment in this area. Now, will it be an earthquake under the ocean that'll cause it? I mean, some people, and I'm not the only one who's seen this, there's dozens of people out there who have had dreams, who have had visions, who have had prophetic words. I've seen some of them, I've read some of them myself over the last 6 years. So I'm not the only person that's seen this. But I also know that there are people who have seen different things and they have different descriptions of it happening. So how it happens, whether it's a meteor that hits the ocean or whether there's some people have seen some kind of a volcanic explosion off the coast of Africa and the islands that cause massive landslides that would then impact the east coast of the country. And so there's been various dreams, various prophetic words that how this is to unfold, how it's to play out. Myself, I have just seen mostly the event itself. I have seen the flooding coming in. The only time I've seen the cause of it, in a sense, has been the one time where I was standing on the shoreline and I saw this meteor. And even with that, it doesn't mean that that isn't a future event or that there's going to not be more than one event. And multiple ways that this can manifest. So we don't know. And like I said, when it comes to things that are prophetic, we see through a glass dimly. Even the great prophets of the Old Testament, they saw many things. They saw the coming of the Lord. They saw Jacob's trouble. They prophesied the Messiah. But then no one in the Old Testament was shown the church age. Like that was completely hidden from them. And so, and it's just God's way of saying God and keeping us humble as men. You know, when I say men, I mean mankind as human beings. He doesn't tell us everything. And so, but I am here to tell you that there is this impending judgment that is coming. The last thing that I want to mention, and then I'll let you all go. I know you all have been following. I hope you've been following the whole news, the real news. Okay, I really steer away from cable news on both sides because they're both influenced. But I am signed up to about 30 to 31 news reels, international news reels that I get information sent to me, emailed to me, just so I can understand what's going on in the world. There's something that happened that I found to be very, 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 very significant. First of all, I'm going to mention something. I know this is going to ruffle some of your feathers, but I'm going to mention it anyways. First and foremost, we know that a little bit over a week ago, the president pulled U.S. troops, or began pulling U.S. troops out of Syria, and he tweeted or whatever, sent the message out stating that he was doing this so that Turkey could invade Syria. And there's been all this controversy around the globe as to why he would do something like this, considering that the Kurds were on the U.S. ally side and helping to defeat ISIS in that area, in that region. So there's all the confusion in regards to that. All right, now I'm not going to get into that whole situation. The only thing I will say to you all is that it's Bible prophecy being fulfilled right in front of our eyes. Okay. But what I do want to mention, something that happened that I just found mind-boggling, is that so we're still in the high holy days for the fall feast. Okay, now we're entering into Sukkot or booths, whichever one, or tabernacles, whichever one you want to call it. So, but on Yom Kippur, which was last week, the middle of last week, the Day of Atonement, I found that Benjamin Netanyahu did his address. And there's a lot of things going on in the government in Israel right now. They're not even really sure who's going to lead what over there, because there's just all of this chaos and confusion that's going on, even in Israel with the government. But nevertheless, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed his constituents or whoever. He did the speech, but it was specifically for Yom Kippur, for the Day of Atonement, which is very sacred, of course, to Israel. And he was asked about his opinion or how did he feel regarding the U.S. or Trump setting up where U.S. troops would be pulled out of the Syrian border? And this is what I found so astonishing was this. Now he went into this long excerpt, but he goes back, he starts off by talking about as in 1973. So I had to go do some research on that because he talked about Yom Kippur War in 1973. And in my mind, I'm like, well, that was the Six-Day War was 67 when they took back Jerusalem. But there was an incident in 1973 that had dealt with Egypt planning an attack on Israel on Yom Kippur in 1973. And so you can do your research on that. I'll probably come back. Maybe I'll come back and do a video just on this code word of 1973 because it's something that a lot of people have been using in the last couple of months, and I've been paying attention to it. But outside of that, what he does is he basically, okay, so first of all, he talks about the fact that Israel can stand on her own. She can defend herself, which is very true. But in a sense, what he was doing too, and it's not even in a sense, it's even what the article said. More than one article, and I'm going to leave the links below, which I rarely do, but I'm going to do that so you all can see that I didn't just make this up. Netanyahu talks about preparing Israel for the day where she will stand alone, that Trump will abandon Israel. But it was this that just rocked me. He compares Trump to Balaam. And so if you don't know the story of Balaam, I behoove you to go look up the story of Balaam. But a real quick synopsis, Balaam was the guy who was hired to curse Israel. Okay, and he was able to be bribed. He was able to be bought to come against Israel. It's the story with the talking donkey, okay? And in the end, he couldn't curse them, but he sends foreign women into the camps because he knew what their weakness was. And in the end, he actually died a very terrible death, okay? So I behoove you to go look up Balaam. But Netanyahu compared Trump to Balaam. And I'm still trying to process that. I find it to be really, really interesting because just a few months ago, this is the same person who they have placed this man's face on coins, and the coin of shekels. They put out banners when the whole announcement about moving the embassy, Trump make Israel great, the whole MAGA, only now this is for Israel logo or whatever. They even named or said to name a development in the Golan Heights after Trump. Like all of this like propaganda, right? And then on Yom Kippur, he's compared to Balaam, who is a traitor. Balaam became a traitor of Israel. He was a traitor of Israel. The reason why I'm bringing this up, not just because it shocked me so much that it even came out of his mouth, it seems like their relationship is a little icy because I'll just go back and mention this. Like I said, I want to make this quick. When Netanyahu didn't win officially the second time around, they had a second election on September 17th because he failed to form a government in April of this year. So they had to have a second election September 17th. And I'm always up to date on Israeli news. When they asked Trump what was his opinion about Netanyahu not winning, it was like he gave him a cold shoulder because his statement was, well, our business is with Israel. Like, it's not Netanyahu. It's our business as a whole is with Israel. It didn't matter who won, who was winning the government. It didn't matter. We're just with Israel kind of thing. So it was like cold shoulder response. And so now, it's like Netanyahu's giving it back, but his comment is very pinpointed, or his response is very pinpointed, because he compared him to Balaam. So I thought that was so incredibly deep. And the reason why, again, that I'm bringing it up is not just because to me that is a major headline, even prophetic headline in a sense, but because we know the scripture tells us that everyone will abandon Israel, everyone in the end, okay, including the United States in the last days. But I bet you will remember a dream that I posted back in July of 2017. It's still there on our Watchman on the Wall page under our faithfulwalkhealingministries.com. In July of 2017, I posted a very vivid dream that I had where I was in a car with Trump driving. And I'm not going to go through the whole entire dream, but he was the driver and I was in the passenger seat. And my son, my firstborn, was in the back, and he's an adult. And how there was this point towards the end of the dream where my son is given this box, and inside of this box is a gem, or pendant, I should say, and it's the Star of David, and it's in gold. And my son is mesmerized by this, and Trump turns around and looks at him, and he's like, you know, you like that, don't you? You've always wanted one of those, huh? My son's like, yeah. And then he looks at me, Trump does, and he says, that's how I'm going to lure them in. He says, I'm going to give them what they want, and then I'm going to pull the plug on them. And I knew immediately in the dream, and I write this out. This is all still up there when you guys can go back into the archives and find it. It's still there, worded like that. I say I knew immediately that he was referencing Israel. There was something that was going to happen where he was going to give them whatever it was they want, a whole bunch of what they want, and then he was going to pull the plug on them abruptly. And thinking about pulling the plug, like my mom, when I was a kid, I used to vacuum the floor, and like instead of like turning the vacuum cleaner off, I would let the plug get pulled. You know, my mom's like, don't do that. You'll tear the wires in the plug. It messes with the flow. Like, you don't pull plugs. You should turn everything off. Like, basically, you should gently, you know, take out the power. It shouldn't be something that's abrupt. You don't abruptly pull plugs, because it can cause problems, okay? And so, but this is what he said, I will pull the plug. So something happens abruptly, something that they're not ready for, okay? And so I just want to bring that up because I thought that was so significantly deep. And I know all of you guys are out there like, oh, you know, he's the most pro-Israel. And we could go into a whole nother video in regards to why Trump is pro-Israel and why he had to be pro-Israel. And it would probably shock some of you on one end, and it would probably make others very angry. But that's not what I'm here for today, okay? But this, I want you to know, he had to be pro-Israel. It was for a reason. It's at the end of the day, everything that is unfolding, saints, is unfolding so that Bible prophecy can be fulfilled, because we cannot change governmental prophecies. We are in the last days, okay? And all of this, everything that's going on around the world, like I even mentioned the troubles in my last video that I put out a few weeks ago, this is all building up, so it's chaos or order out of chaos. That's a saying that they have in the elite, the Illuminati. And beyond all of that, it's what it is. It's setting the stage so that we as a people, as mankind, will cry out for a one world leader. We will cry out for peace. And there's not going to be a cry for peace unless there's chaos. And that's what we're dealing with. So things are, on one end, in our eyes, everything's falling apart. There's all this chaos and confusion, even in our country, even in our government. Our land is divided, our churches are divided, our government is divided. But I need you all to know, this is not because Jesus is going to come down and miraculously heal everything in this country. No, this is being set up so that the beast will arise, so that we produce the Antichrist to come in and set the stage for the one world order. So I just wanted to mention that. The last thing I want to mention is that it's interesting that Turkey is the person that's going in to invade. They just made the report today that the Kurds they had nowhere to go in northern Syria, so they have run to Damascus for help. Um, that's very interesting that that's breaking news today, because Damascus is, for the most part, Syria is destroyed. Damascus is pretty much destroyed. But if we go into the Isaiah 17 prophecy, it says that it's uninhabitable. In other words, like nobody can live there. And even though Damascus is very much destroyed and it's broken, it's blown to smithereens, but there are people that still live there. There are parts where people are still residing. Some even say Assad is still there. And now the Kurds are going there. And so the fact that they're running to Damascus, we really just need to keep our eyes peeled on this situation because of the timeline that we're on anyways. And I just want to add in this that that the three most powerful presidents besides America that has been in Syria for the last several years, 6-7 years now, has been Turkey, Iran, and Russia. And in 2016, I had a dream that's also up on our website still, where I saw Turkey and Russia making an alliance. But this is what I wanted to leave you all with. They made an alliance, but in the end, that alliance, along with some other people, led to us being invaded. And go back and look for that, okay? Because again, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. It led to us being invaded. Shortly after I put out that that post, I did make a video about that. It was probably a month or 2 months after I put out that dream. Turkey and Russia made an official military alliance with each other. They signed an agreement, a pact. It was about 2 months after I put posted this dream. So Turkey be invading Syria. I want you to know doggone well it is that Russia is backed by it, okay, or backing it. And in that dream, they lined up with a couple of other people, and it led to our own invasion. And here's the other thing. Here's one more thing I want to tell you. And when they came to invade us, the person that was supposed to represent us, our sitting president, the seat was empty. They weren't there. There was no one to represent us. Now, I was shown this in 2016 when Obama was still president, okay? But that was 3 years ago. And now here we are 3 years later. Obama's no longer our president, but look who is. And look what they're trying to do. They're in the process of impeaching him. I don't know if that's going to go into play. I still think it's all still a part of a big distraction. But remember what God told me, because America hasn't repented, that disaster would come from the east, war would come from the west, and he would cut off the head. And in that dream in 2016, there was no one standing to represent us. The seat was empty when we got invaded. So I just want to leave you all with that. I know that's intense. Look on that. Our website is www.faithfulwalkhealingministries.com. Go on there and go on the right-hand side and click on Watch from the Wall. Go into the archives for both 2016 and July of 2017 for those dreams, and take a look at those and share them. Feel free to share them with whoever you want to share them from, okay? So thank you as always for letting me into your homes today, you all. Until next time, God bless all of you. Know that we love you. We're covering you all in prayer. Keep us covered in prayer. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Shalom.